So let's introduce our next speaker for today. Now, our next speaker's name is Kumar Singh, and he's a seasoned product manager who has built and managed various products across different stages of product lifecycle. He's a musician. He's balancing the corporate world. Sumit is also a gamification expert, and that's very important, especially if you're in a corporate SaaS company. And today, Sumit is going to talk about introduction to gamification. Gamification promises to create unique competition-based experiences, and that is what delivers immense value. So it's going to be very special. Please welcome Sumit Kumar Singh. Hi, Sumit.
Hi guys, how are you doing?
All good, Sumit. Could you please switch on your camera, please?
I am trying to look at it.
Yes, we can see you now.
Awesome guys, how are you?
Yeah, we are doing good. This energy lifter, we definitely need it at this time, Sumit. We want you to lift up our energy level.
I just made it full screen. I'll probably take a dipstick check in next 2 minutes in case if my voice is clear, my speed is okay, you can see my screen, etc., etc. So, unlocking gamification essentially, what it has made products really to do. Like, wow! Is there anyone? We can't really have a Q&A right here, but I can actually use the chatbot to do a Q&A. So, what is gamification? If you can just probably just give me a quick one there, 1 minute. What do you think is gamification all about? Anyone? A way to make experience feel like a game or some. Keep them coming, engaging people, implementing game mechanics, Yuvraj. Spot on. Making things interesting, engaging users. Spot on, increasing customer experience, introducing elements of games. So using game elements to engaging users, blah, blah, blah. Awesome. So you guys have a good understanding of what essentially it kind of goes well. Probably one of the earliest implementations of gamification that you can think of is a buy one get one free offer. Okay, we have all been studying and reading about. When I was in college back in like 1999 is when I entered IIT. And then a few of these IIT and senior alums would typically come and they talk about, oh, I have this JetBlue card and they have Jet Miles. That was my introduction to the loyalty, loyalty bit per se, and that's something which kind of got me intrigued about the whole piece of what gamification is. So here's what gamification is: the use of elements of gameplay in non-game context. And if I can possibly, share a bit about how it kind of works is by the earliest example that you can think of in a non-game like context is that everybody has, and this goes to the Sapiens, the book. The humans got evolved and then they formed the groups and then they had a tribe leader and everybody wanted to become a tribe leader, right? Because it had power. That I believe is one of the earliest example of gamification. Every time you have a structure to an organization, you will always find their ways of having a leaderboard. The moment you have a leaderboard, you're basically sticking around to the game of the rules. So the rules of the game. And the moment you have the rules of the game, people would want to break into the rules. And that's where you have the systems and people breaking in, and you have the whole power play coming in, and that's essentially where the whole gamification gets kicks in. Some of the basics of what gamification are, and I'm sticking to the 101 definitions around gamification. I'm not really going too deep into the whole product management side of it, or going deeper into how do you design a point system or a badge system. I'm sticking around to the common mechanics of how you can introduce gamification in your own product journeys, in your own experiences, and we probably stick around to the Q&A towards the end of it. The 5 most common mechanics that people typically use, we also call them as 3, but then the two more that the levels and challenges have come. The top 3 are points, leaderboards, and badges. You have points, you give points to anything, and you think that the level of engagement suddenly goes up. You introduce badges. One of the early ones that introduced badges was this app called Foursquare. So every time you checked into a particular restaurant, people would become mayor or a county. That's more to do with the US economy, but typically, people would get certain level of freebies. Say if you become a county or a mayor or sheriff, you would get a free beer, you get a free burger, something like that. So reward achievements visually essentially is what a badge is all about. Leaderboards, like I said, every time you have a structure to anything, you have a leaderboard. Everybody is now working in a setup which is an organization, and you are the CEO of everybody who aspires to become a CEO or go to the next level. You put in more hours, you burn your midnight hours, oil, and you do so much more. You push yourself to the boundaries because you feel that, okay, there is a reward at the end of it. And that reward essentially is moving up the value chain. That's a leaderboard. Levels essentially have they could be stack ranks, it could be clubbing of a few step jumps, and it could be different ways in which you want to club people, but then essentially saying that, hey, this one cohort essentially lies in silver, or then gold and platinum, blah blah blah, and that those are essentially levels. And quite often than not, points and levels and leaderboards tend to work in a similar kind of a tandem coherence. May not always fit into the right level, because you may have a leaderboard inside a certain level also. So you can think of having the leaderboard within a silver or a gold, something which I'll probably show as we go along. But that's essentially how it kind of works when you want to introduce the game mechanics as gamification. Okay, guys, quick one. Is my speed okay? Do you want me to be a little slower? How? Just please, quick one on the in the chat if you guys are okay. I see some subs coming in,
I think
and I
it's
see.
okay, Sumit. Yes.
Okay, cool. Thanks a bunch. Moving on. The four main ways to drive engagement. One very important is to give accelerated feedbacks. Anytime that you onboard a person into your journey, you need to tell the user if what he is doing is right or not. And every time he is doing the right thing, you give a big gold coin, or give a big thumbs up, or you say, hooray, you've just done ABC thing. If you've not done right, you need to scaffold him, you need to handhold him and do the right thing. For example, when I was with Times Internet and I was doing this whole engagement gamification, we were struggling to get views for Navbharat Times, for the videos particularly, because a lot of people would just come read the news, or they were on the slideshow, which is like the whole fiasco with Deepika Padukone's photographs came in. Now people wanted to get over from the slideshow and get into the video zone, because everyone knows, like, you have more engagement with videos. The ads that you place on videos tend to give you better ROI on of the ads. So one of the ways that we try to struggle around is that how do you actually tell them that you got to watch more videos? There are various ways of doing that, but after like five stories, or after five photographs, you tell them, by the way, there is a related video here. So the moment you give them an accelerated feedback, okay, after you've done five of these, go to the videos, and you can actually earn more number of points. And we saw that the whole engagement actually jumped by 300% in next 2 weeks for that one cohort for which we did our test out there before we actually rolled it out to the entire user base. A clear goals and rules of play is number two in the ways of by designing and driving engagement. Till the time you don't really tell people how to earn more points, what do you mean by levels and leaderboards? People will typically be, worrying about, what happened. An amazing example of one of the big companies who got this particular thing wrong is Tripadvisor. They introduced a lot of badges, they introduced a lot of levels, they even gave points, but then those points basically did nothing. They introduced levels which actually got them a lot of engagement, but then what? The users or the gamers basically hit a roadblock, and it was an end game. The moment they realized that these points or badges are not really giving me anything tangible, the narrative, which is the number 3 point here, was incomplete. So a clear goals and rules of play and a complete narrative was completely missing in Tripadvisor. And that's one of the reasons why a lot of engagement that was actually happening on TripAdvisor, especially in COVID-19, lost it all. Third, the fourth and the most important of it is challenging but achievable tasks. When people try to design their game mechanics, especially around the challenges, they either make those challenges so difficult that people are not able to complete them, or they trivialize it so much that you do a particular thing and you get 1,000 points. And then people suddenly start to feel, oh, big shit, man. I was like, I can do that, right? I don't really need to really pay attention. Now, here is the thing. If you introduce so much of friction that it leads to uninstallation of your application, or it actually leads the product users to fall into that whole chasm, that's not going to work. You need to make the challenge challenging enough that there is a sense of achievement that comes along with it. So if you keep on giving more number of points to the users for free, you're trivializing the entire earning experience for the user. And that's the reason why people feel that, oh, this is not exciting at all. They might feel excited in the beginning, but then as they go along, they completely lose interest because they're just giving them out too easy. Some examples of gamification that some of the largest companies have done. This is LinkedIn. I'm sure a lot of people, I'm just going back to the check. I'm getting, okay, no major. Google Pay, yes, absolutely. Archudan Ajay says Google Pay. A spot on example. I was about to come to that Google Pay also. These guys are doing, so something what Google Pay did, I'm glad you brought that up. Something what Google Pay did with the scratch cards, and they were giving back a huge amount of money in the beginning. And then they started, the Paytm started to do the same thing. And what Paytm is giving is basically stickers. Now, there is no value to those stickers. I mean, whatever you want to do is absolutely obscure with those particular stickers. So while Google Pay really nailed it out, they had a massive run when they launched it. They had almost like a 10x growth in the early days. With Paytm using the same methodology, same gamification experience, basically couldn't even move the needle. I mean, I don't even care about if they give me a scratch card, because what the scratch card is giving me is just a sticker. Cred is an amazing example. I would want to hold on from the Cred example for a while, Osborne, for certain reasons again, but I'll probably just come back to that as we come back, as we finish off the whole thing. LinkedIn, one of the earliest examples of gamification in the more contemporary product. And as you started off with the journey on LinkedIn, when you started to make the profile, the right, left, right bottom, what you see is a 25% completeness. This is basically a progress bar, as you see on the top. And the progress bar tells you how much you've completed and how far you are away from an all-star profile. Now, skills and endorsements essentially, again, kind of, is a crowdsourcing of the social impact here, which basically says that how skilled are you in what kind of a skill set. And when people started to look at this one particular chart, they would actually get to know what are your top skills and how you're essentially doing it. What LinkedIn really did very well was the whole profile completeness, because then people would, really move into the product to rush to complete the profile, because now that they've signed up, they've invested their time and they want to make most out of it. But what LinkedIn could not really do well is about the whole skills and endorsement thing. While you have it, it's a nice thing. But then what about it? I'm not really able to, unless if you tell me how can I actually make better out of the whole piece around my own skill sets. Who are the other people that I can really relate with? They've done something about it in the network section, but something not on the homepage. If you see the top right, top left chart, which is the line chart, which talks about how many number of views that you've seen, how many, they've actually given a chart of engagement. This, I think, is an extremely cool way of letting people know how their profiles and how they've actually, gone ahead engaging with people. This kind of gives you an extremely nice kick about the whole connect that you have with people. Okay. So some examples here for LinkedIn. This is Duolingo, one of my favorite apps. Absolutely. I love what Duolingo has done in terms of how they give the streaks, how they give the goals, the achievement level ups. They have an extremely cool UI, which doesn't even feel that you are learning a particular language, and you can just make so much more. Somebody actually did bring a Duolingo up here yeah, Piyush said about Duolingo, and also Udemy. Yes, Piyush, Facebook group badges are there, yes, but not again. It's a very loosely held thing. You can't really do much about it. The whole user journey is pretty broken around that. So that's the reason why I would want to possibly, go too deep into the Facebook group badges. And coming back to Duolingo, again, they have points, they have leaderboards. They haven't really done much of badges, but they do have levels. And inside each one of the levels, if you see, they have gold and silver. And within silver, where exactly do you stand? How much of XPs do you need to move up to the ladder? How much you've done? What is the challenge that you want to really do it? It's extremely customized, and you can personalize your own journey. And giving a sense of the achievements that you would want the customer to really play around with. They have the badges. Now, depending on what your speed of learning, the badges also keep changing, which I think is an extremely cool way of engaging. So every user has uh, their own journey, and they all become a hero of sorts in their own journey every time they unlock a particular achievement here. So really cool way of doing. Somebody's really looking forward to learn gamification. I think Duolingo is one of the best apps to really do it. Moving forward, more serious example of doing gamification here is an HR platform, which is hiring Recruiter Plus. Now, right on the top, the moment you land in, it tells you you have achieved the goal of hiring 20 candidates in a month, right? You achieve 140% of your goal, 230 RP points, blah, blah, blah. It also gives you a meter, which tells you how far you are from your view. So out of the 1203 to 210 new candidates, you're kind of midway, 21 responses due. So you're kind of, looking nice on that. So this is a more serious example of how you can actually introduce gamification. Point to be noted here, you also have a level, which kind of tells you which level you are at, and there you can design more often than not. Any gamification platform that you introduce should be able to tell you how to design levels and which level you are at. And this journey essentially is very different for each user per se. How or each user journey or each use case per se. So each use case can be defined by different users.
I think
That I
we
would want
lost
to
Sumit.
show an example of how a fintech app looks like essentially. This is the example of gamification, which somebody also mentioned about cred. So debit, cash, how much of a budget has been, how's the cash flows looking like, how you split the entire spending patterns on food and dining, total number of transactions. If you look at the overall piece around the split of how your spends have looked like, gas and fuel, 236 of 372, alcohols and bars is 44 of 20. Hence, it kind of shows in a red. Fast food is in yellow. It's an amazing way in which you can actually play around with the progress bar as along with the colors. Uh, and a lot of designers here in their house, I would probably not go into that realm, but playing around with with cool colors, warm colors, chromatic, achromatic colors can really bring in a lot of value in the way you can actually design these experiences for for your users. The new narrative, if I can possibly talk about, and coming from an example from LinkedIn, when you create a screen, when you create a first screen out, you create a new user and you're starting to set that up. From a LinkedIn standpoint, I'm sure they would have thought about the journey, and which is what I really want all of you to really focus on. Gone are the days when you would only want to focus on a user as one transacting user and you talk about the life cycle value in terms of how many transactions the person has done on your platform. The narrative has changed to the journeys. How has this person onboarded? Did he come to you from he come to you via a referral? These two journeys, or somebody just stumbled upon a Google ad and now he's created the user profile. These three user profiles, if you track their journey inside the product, will be very, very different. And ideally, they should also be very different because the guy who is actually coming into the platform by word of mouth should be in a very, very different fashion versus when somebody is really stumbling upon just like that. Because He's really just discovering the whole platform. And each of these journeys essentially can be a milestone or a challenge based engagement. Now, till the time, which kind of goes back to this screen, which says on the right hand side, which talks about clear goals and rules of play and a compelling narrative. Till the time you don't do that, till the time you don't let somebody know about what's in it for them, how does it look like, and LinkedIn does that beautiful. Duolingo does that absolutely amazing, spot on. Uh, Cred does not have a narrative at all, to be honest. Uh, there are ways in which you can possibly, also bring along the whole narrative around, because they do have a narrative, but it's kind of hidden to the users. Now, for each of the challenge or a milestone based engagement, till the time you don't really complete that challenge, you don't move to the next level, right? Just like any other game. Now, while you're doing that, when you're still designing that entire piece, it's very important that the customer really understands what's in it for him at that particular level. How does he really win that whole level? How does he really go over the challenge and be successful and move to the next level? How you do that essentially is this. I love this whole model of Hooked by Nee Ryle, which talks about the action, trigger, variable, reward, and investment. For each of the levels, you need to have a trigger. The trigger essentially tells you what is the action, the simplest behavior in anticipation of a reward, which could be, tapping a button, unlocking a card, swiping up or right, what Tinder does. Uh, Similarly, like I feel very intrigued for why networking on LinkedIn could not be as simple as what Tinder is doing. At the end of the day, it's all about connecting people, and especially on the mobile app, it would actually become super easy. Bumble does that. Bumble has a very intriguing and a very interesting play around with the whole networking cycle of it. Now, they do have their own frictions and they have their own, paywalls, etc. But that's a different piece. But in terms of the UX per se, they've actually got that right. Which, in terms of purely the engagement piece per se, they've seen a good runway in the early days and when they were launched in the Southeast Asian market. And I think from purely an engagement perspective, it's the action that on which they're actually playing around is very, very simple. It's just swipe right or swipe left. As against on LinkedIn, you kind of have to go and then click and find the reads, blah blah blah. So that's I think which something which they could have actually done. Variable rewards is very interesting. If I tell you that, every time you open the packet, you get a chocolate, you probably would be excited about it for the first 2, 3 times. But not anymore. Google Pay, right, does it beautifully well. You have a scratch card, and it's amazing why they've actually used a scratch card as the gamification mechanic here, because of the whole curiosity angle to it. They could have done a gift wrap, they could have done a couple of other things, but scratching is something which kind of comes from, scratching the itch kind of a thing, and you satisfy that itch to people. Every time you need to have a variable reward, if you know that you will get a 10% cash back, boom, you've kind of lost it. Now you'll go into the whole paralysis analysis mode, saying that, okay, 10% cash back, I need to spend X amount of money to get, Y amount of benefits. With this Y amount of benefits, my velocity of purchase, blah, blah, blah. You go into that whole mode and you kind of lost the whole battle. But here is where we are saying Google comes in and says, okay, we need to give a reward to people. Let's give them from 0 to 1,000 rupees. Even in the beginning days, they even gave people, for 1.1 times of what the transaction amount was. And I think that became a word of mouth, and that became viral, and they kind of, jumped onto it. Investment essentially here is that the moment you have the word of mouth kicking in, they go and people talk about it. Hey, I got 1,000 rupees, I got 500 rupees by doing a transaction of 1,500. Oh, it's amazing. People should go about it, blah, blah, blah. People started downloading. And the whole bit of work, essentially, the investment is that app, downloading the app, setting it up, and really starting to do that. So internal trigger then comes in, and every time you want to make the payment, because of the early days, I got some 5 rupees, 10 rupees, 15 rupees. Every time I want to make the payment, because I know that there is, and now if you can see that you don't get as much cash back on Google Pay, and that's the reason why a lot of people have not really started, are not really using it. They've started to decline the engagement rank. Happens with all the applications, nothing wrong in that. But still, if there is a way in which I kind of know, it's very easy for them to really bump up that whole engagement. They increase the amount of cash back, and people will go back to the whole Google Pay experience as against Paytm Karo, because the internal trigger here is that I have to make the payment, and I have to make the payment. If there is a variable reward, I'll probably just go ahead and do the payment. Very simple. Moving on. Okay. Is the speed okay? Snapchat streak? Yep. Nuruddin, great example there. Google local guide gamification also looks good. Absolutely. Very layman query. It is difficult to get into Harvard Business School or any Ivy League to burn. Is it difficult to get into Harvard Business School? Oh, I did not learn gamification at HBS. I'm sorry if that gave the way. There are some amazing courses done by the guy called Yukai Chao, who's a Stanford PhD, still teaching some gamification pieces there. And mostly it's, observe and learn and read books. So I'll probably, move forward. I'll come to this one towards the end of it, Jen, in details if you would want. Uh, Coming back to the hook model for Instagram. Now, triggers, the essential external triggers, apps like Facebook, Twitter, app notification, app icon, no big deal. Everybody is now being the word of mouth because people are leaving Facebook and everybody is asking, "Oh, are you on Instagram?" I'm like, "Sure, yeah. I mean, we are. So can I have your QR code or can I have your Insta handle?" And they get excited. So what you can see now is that there is a FOMO which is actually getting triggered. Now, this app, okay, this graphic is wrong because they've put external triggers and external trigger both. My bad. Should have been an internal trigger. A lot of people are now coming to Instagram because of FOMO, purely because just so many people are asking about their Insta handles, and also with TikTok now getting banned, and a lot of TikTok users coming to Instagram using stories to make more engaging content. There is also that whole FOMO and boredom kicking in. So that's a trigger. The action kind of, is a very simple thing. Open the app and keep scrolling. That's the action. Now, the variable reward essentially here, and quite like what Snapchat also worked is, every time you open up Instagram, you see a new feed. One of the reasons why they introduced multiple photographs in the same tile is because in case if you come more frequently and there is no new update from your friends and network, they probably just show you a different photograph in the same tile. So you don't feel as if you've already seen this, but you just feel that the whole timeline is new and updated because you just see new photographs every time, right? You find new friends. The boredom is kind of gone. You are able to discover new content via the search app, and now you have the reels. And boy, if you ask me how Instagram is really pushing hard to push reels in your face, they probably make everything as a reel. Right from the search to the ad to the post to everything could be a reel. The investment here essentially are two ways. One is, of course, you install the app, you add your friends, you invite your followers, you go and also follow people, right? And there is a certain level. So if you have X number of followers, or if you are following certain number of people, then it kind of, makes your profile to be shown to different people. So there is a whole social graph thing which kind of comes in. And using the social graph and the phone number, you kind of, has a multiplier effect. And then you start to show up into different, friend suggestions also. So why is this core loop important, right? This whole core loop of having the trigger, action, reward, and investment is very important because the core loop design is the base of your retention. If you don't get this right, if you don't get this whole reward, progress, and attention, the action piece right, the retention definitely falls through. And this is true for each of the steps in your narrative. If you remember, we did this. So each of those milestone challenges, you need to have the same action reward. So as you move forward, the challenge becomes bigger, the reward becomes bigger, the progress bar becomes bigger. You kind of, move from silver to gold to platinum. You go from level 1 to level 10. You got more powers. You got more avatars. You got more heroes to play around with. You just get, you get more recognitions as you go up onto the levels. So it's very important that you get your core loops designed very strong. The core loop and monetization strategy is very, very closely related. So if you don't have the retention, you don't have the core loop, you don't have the retention. Because you don't have the retention, you'll not be able to monetize your customer base. Uh, it's very important that you do the right kind of tutorial and onboarding, because if you don't do that right, a lot of people would just fall off on the action. The first time you give the external trigger, you don't get the right kind of tutorial on onboarding. The user is clearly confused as to how do we get, what kind of actions really do I need to do to get the right kind of a reward. And because that action and reward thing is kind of missing, the investment doesn't really happen, which is how like the entire retention falls through. So if you get that right, tutorial and onboarding, the retention really goes dramatically high, no questions asked. Meta essentially is all the feedback. So if you're giving the right kind of feedback to the users as to what are they doing right, LinkedIn started doing some time back about creating new posts and creating more notes and posting new articles. That really worked very well for them, because with so many number of people who were writing, the content essentially became very, very engaging, and they realized that the whole content management or content marketing on LinkedIn is actually for real, which they've been trying to struggle for early days. But now if you see, more and more number of people are creating content for LinkedIn specifically, and giving them a feedback, how many people saw it, how many people reacted with it, engaged with it, the number of views. This is all about the whole meta. Now, these are essentially the whole games, and games that look and feel great have an impact on your marketing and early retention. If you don't get the UX right, if you don't get the design of the whole game that you're designing for the user, if you have a very tacky looking dashboard, it won't sell through, because people would be more confused, because it just adds to the whole psychic cost. It needs to be smooth, simple. It needs to be extremely easy for somebody to really read through. And I want to go back to the example of this one. It's very easy for anyone to really read this particular slide. You have the levels. You clearly know the achievement that you've made. You know how far you are from your milestones. It's very easy for anyone to really fall through and just really read it. You don't have to put in extra, brain cycles to understand this piece. Moving on from here, let's connect over, LinkedIn. This is my QR code. Please scan it. If you have any questions, happy to take any questions. Guys, over to you. I think I'm done with my side of things. When not to use gamification? Okay, interesting question. I think the scenarios in which you want a corrective feedback to be given, that's perhaps one of those things when you don't want to use gamification, because you want to build an empathy at that point in time. While empathy can have both meanings, people typically can construe it in a very different fashion. When you have, when you do corrective learning, essentially for anyone, when you're giving feedback to people around how they want to change the whole behavior, that's something which you don't want to use gamification. But then gamification essentially can be used there also. So I'm trying to find how to give. Let me come back to you on this one, Nived. Okay, how do we know when gamification is taking away from the actual experience of purpose of said application? When people start to use the application for not the core product experience. I think that's one of the reasons one of the ways in which you say, so you need to measure all the experiences that you want to put in. You need to design gamification for the core experience of the application. Yuvraj, if you can give me more example of what exactly do you mean? I can think of many, but I want to make the response to your question a little more contextual so that I am able to answer it better. If you could just type it in again, or in case if you have some more questions, anyone else, please keep shooting in.
Sumit, first of all, I would like to thank you for such an insightful presentation. And I have a quick question personally, like
Yeah, go for it.
being a gamification enthusiast and product manager and a CEO. Please give us some tips to convince our product management people, or the management people, to convince to include gamification in the process. They will be like, okay, I fixed the launch date. This is our launch date, and these are the list of features that needs to be done within this launch date. Just do it. So how can we convince them to include these gamification stuffs inside that thing?
Great question, Saha. And this is something which a lot of leaders essentially struggle with because they don't get the narrative right. They get the transaction right, which is where talking to a leadership team when you're presenting a gamification idea in terms of the journey and not the transaction really helps. So when you break the entire user experience and the whole product roadmap in terms of how do you want to introduce it, what kind of a cohort are we talking about, which kind of a gamification experience do you want to introduce to your 20% customer who engages with the 80% of your application, if you put in numbers to each one of these, that really helps. Because at a leadership level, at a CEO level, you kind of clearly miss out on the journey aspect of product management. They think, okay, Saha will come in, they'll probably put in a few, loops and behaviors, and I'll get a 10x, engagement. That does not happen like that. You need to really tell them that gamification is a journey. It's not a transaction. And that's where essentially you need to tell them that I need to break my customer segment in different form and fashions. I need to really understand what problem sets for each of these consumer sets I'm solving. The problem statements for somebody who's just come onto your app will be very different versus somebody who's been a very avid user of your application. He would have a very different problem statement. Now you got to do user research on both of these spectrums. If you don't get your user research on both of these spectrums, one or the two would definitely fall through the product chasm. And even if you're introducing something, somebody would feel, why would you want to introduce me to this journey? I already know it. The other one would feel, oh, this is too, this is like very, very difficult. How do I really do that? I don't even know this. I've just started. So you don't want to so one approach does not solve all the problems. You have to break your problem statements. You have to break your user journeys and the entry exit points for each of the users, which is where the user narrative comes in very, very handy.
Yeah, that is a very elaborated reply, Sumit. It is very clear and convincing. Anything
I
else
have
to
one
say?
question, Sumit. So,
Yes, yes.
I myself being been on a spot where I've been working on multiple funnel corrections, multiple onboarding sessions, where we just want to make sure that all of these users who are signing up for our service, they know what we do, and we also know what kind of service they need. But we also want them to understand why will we be beneficial for them, right? So there's always a choice between we improve their experience via gamification, or we tell them what value we will provide you. Now, especially for users in India, they do not have a lot of time, especially for business apps. I'm talking about a proper B2B context. People do not have time to read through content. They don't have enough time to go through all of these things. They have this idea of, for example, Swiggy, right? It's a B2C model, but I'm just giving an example. I, as a user for a B2C product like Swiggy, I do not want a gamification onboarding. I do not want anything. I just want to come in, find restaurants, select my item, and then get out, right? That's a similar experience for B2B users also. While retaining the gamification idea, how do we convince them? How do we convey the value that they will get after the gamification? Any thoughts on that?
Great question there, Kuzima. Let's run through a role set problem here. You are a Swiggy user. You come onto the platform. You want to only find restaurants
Right.
that you can order, right? I can significantly make that better by actually helping you onboard on the app. I can really possibly, give you a tag cloud saying what kind of cuisines do you want. You're the first time user. I'm onboarding you, right? I don't know what times of the day do you typically order. I can ask you for a preferences. What time of the day do you do? Do you typically order for your lunch or your dinner or your breakfast? Do you typically order a Chinese or a South Indian or a North Indian? Do you typically, can you wait longer for it? Do you want something which is around your location? Do you want a fast food? Do you want something from a fine dine which might come at a cost? What's your typical price range? All of these data points can actually go into narrowing down your choices of restaurants through which you can actually bring in. And the moment you've done it, after the first transaction is done, you can ask him to favorite it. The next time the user comes, you have this whole favorite section on the top, which you've done it, and you don't have to go through the whole discovery process itself. I mean, all of this is gamification, right? And plus, at the same time, I can say that you just place the first order. By the way, next order is 50% off on Swiggy. This gets you to come back to the second time. The moment you come to the fifth, I say, okay, one dessert for free the moment you place your fifth order or your 10th order. I can bring in so much more around that in the same ecosystem of your placing the food without really disturbing the experience. Now, it is not really introducing a game-like experience. Now, a lot of people might get confused there that gamification is introducing game-like experience. That's not what gamification is. Gamification is introducing game mechanics in non-game-like scenarios. So just by telling them the fifth one will be on the house, okay? Please let us know if you like the food. You give a bad rating, you give 1 star and say, okay, we're sorry for your bad experience. Here, your cashback is on us. You will not go to Zomato if Swiggy does that. I mean, sorry for calling out names, but then that's how it is. The moment Swiggy does that, okay, you had a bad experience with the restaurant, we take the guarantee because we onboarded this restaurant. You had a bad experience, it's on us. We give you a free meal next time. You will not go to anybody else.
Right.
Those are the ways in which you have to experience. Now again, break the problem down into the users and try to really get down to the pain point that the customer is. Now ordering food is one pain point, doing transaction is another pain point, and collecting feedback is a different pain point altogether. And if I can possibly bring in Airbnb's experience here, and if you read about Airbnb and read the podcast that they do, a happy flow is when somebody is giving it. If the customer comes into an Airbnb property, they stay there for some time, and they go back happy. The chances are a happy customer will typically give you a 3 on 4 or 3 on 5, right? How do you make it a 4 on 5? How do you make it a 5 on 5? And going forward, how can you actually make it a 7 on 5 is how they differentiate on the experiences. Now, a customer who's coming in, do you want to give them a complimentary breakfast? Probably, he'll give you a 4 on 5. Can you help them to do a local itinerary for them if they are coming out from a different country? Probably they give you a 5 on 5. Now, somebody who can actually walk you around, do you want to make bookings on their behalf, set everything ready, give them a car? That's typically how you would want to make a 7 on 5, right? This is essentially how you go about thinking of the experiences. And if you're thinking of your own product experience in the Airbnb fashion, I think gamification, adding these elements of badges, leaderboards, and points can really make a significant jump for you there.
Yeah, that sounds great, Sumit. And we have a few more questions. I guess we have already answered those questions. Maybe it's regarding maintaining the balance between gamification and unproductivity, and also including gamification for the employees who may not need it. Like it's for professional enterprise employees who may not need it. But I believe you have already answered it. It's by connecting the data points and redefining the whole journey. It's not just about adding some gamification elements. I hope you answered it. And one personal question, Sumit, I just want to know about your travel plans. I know you as a traveler, and I just want you to know something about your travel plans, upcoming travel plans. Also, one of our participants asked, like, what is the gamification started? Where is the gamification started in human life? So, is there the travel in some way it helps you to bring in some gamification in your life, and how much it is important to have some gamification in our own life, professionally and personally?
One of the easiest gamification that you can bring in your life is the whole concept of cheat days, right? You promise yourself a nice buy one get one free on Domino's with a cheese burst with loads of chicken and maybe a glass of beer only if you're able to do a 5K run every day. That's an easiest example, right? You get up like before 6:30 every day. You go for a 5K run, and Friday nights you treat yourself on that. That's one of the easiest way of introducing gamification in your life. But essentially, go back to the problem statements. Like, how can you really do well? What kind of a motivator can really motivate you to be better? And there are five motivators, if I can possibly bring in a little more insights into gamification. The top five motivators that work very well for anyone across the globe. Money and sex are the top two drivers. And then you had food, films, and phones. Food, anything around buy one get one free, 50, Wednesdays, ladies' night off in various places. Films, entertainment. Look at what Amazon did, what Netflix did, the premium model, the Hotstar doing with Game of Thrones is all about gamification. They very smartly played it on a Monday morning, right? Monday morning, 7 a.m. when the engagement is possibly the lowest across the week. And then they introduced Game of Thrones on a Monday morning, 7 a.m. The world woke up, especially the whole of India woke up rather, to watch Game of Thrones on Monday morning, 7 a.m. when ideally you should be getting ready and you have Monday blues. So you break the Monday blues, you watch Game of Thrones, and then you go and keep breaking it out to the people. Of course, you have to face a lot of flank for giving out giving out a lot of stuff on Game of Thrones, but that's typically how it happens. Those are all examples of gamification. Okay, Harsh has a very interesting point. If we overdo some interactions or too much feedback mechanism for a small step, it is recommended. Won't it make users annoyed at some point in time? Of course, it does. Harsh, you're spot on. You have to have a very subtle balance between how and what kind of a feedback do you want to give to the users. And that kind of comes in from the first version of this feedback comes from doing a floor test of your product journeys on with your small team. Get 10 people in a room or maybe have one-on-one discussions and just ask them to play around with the prototype, and you'll get to know what the users are thinking. You need to learn to separate the noise from the signal, and in about 10 interviews, you will probably pick up a few keywords that people are talking about and which will always start to show up as a narrative of the user. Those should definitely be a part of the feedback mechanism that you're telling, because that's something which people are catching up with. And depending on that, if you have over-engineered the product journey, then obviously a lot of things will fall through the gap. A lot of these feedbacks will go into the blind spot. People will not engage with them. If they engage with them and you start to realize that, people are now starting to close it, they don't even read it, you will know how the data essentially, the data talks to you. Make data your friend. Very, very, very important for anyone who's looking to get into gamification. Make data your friend and let them really work closely, read each data every time. I'm not sure how much time do we have more, Saha, but drop in some energy, guys. Come on, show me some energy.
I think the energy is pouring in via emojis. And in terms of time, yes. For any other questions, let's take them in the chat.
Sure, absolutely. And just as a last one, code of LinkedIn. Please scan it, connect with me. Would love to hear your thoughts, any feedback. You want to connect with me and have a coffee conversation around gamification, product journeys, blah, blah, blah. I mean, all in, feel free.
Thank you, Sumit. For people who are participating in this event, you can find Sumit Instagram account and LinkedIn account in our website. You can just go and connect with him. He'll be ready to answer all your queries and questions, and even you can contact him through the direct chat within our application. I hope you stay for some time, Sumit, for
Sure.
people direct chat.
We will also
absolutely.
link to you, Sumit's LinkedIn profile in the chat so that people can connect with you easily.
Great.
Right. Thank you very much, Sumit.
Somebody raised a hand.
Yes.
Request for mic access. Nuruddin has just requested for mic access.
Saha, can you help with that?
It was a mistake, it seems. She
Okay.
goes back.
All right.
Okay. All right. Cool, guys. Thank you so much for having me. Thank you for listening me and tolerating me. Indeed, a pleasure to be a part of this whole thing. Saha and team, great work. Keep rocking. Yeah.
Thank you so
Thank you
much.
very
It
much.
was so much insight.
Yeah.
Thank you so much.
Bye-bye.
Thank you. Yes. Bye bye.
Bye-bye.